She collapsed with a gasp, one hand on her belly, the other gripping the edge of the kitchen counter before everything went black. Outside, thunder rolled. Rain streamed down the windowpane, what was left of it. Through the cracked glass, a figure watched. He was just a boy, soaking wet. 17. Homeless. Unseen by most of the world. But tonight, she was the one no one saw. There were no footsteps rushing in. No neighbors. No emergency call. Just him. The same boy she once gave a sandwich and a smile to. Nothing more. Now she lay motionless. Pregnant. Alone. He could walk away. Pretend he didn't see it. But something kept him there, frozen in the rain. And then, he moved. He stepped through the broken glass. What would you do if the person who saved your life had nothing of their own? Like and subscribe to follow the most unexpected stories of healing and hope. This is where it all began. Dearest heart, if you found yourself here, it's no accident. These stories, of love, of longing, of quiet courage, are for you. From one soul to another, welcome to Love Enchanted. Here, every whisper means something. Every silence has a name. And every heartbeat tells a story waiting to be heard. Whether you're mending, remembering, or still searching, know this, you are not alone. You're seen, you're felt, and you belong in this place where stories breathe. So stay a while. Let the world fall away. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We feel them. Ava Delaney was the kind of woman people admired from afar. Polished, brilliant, and always in control, she had built her career from the ground up, becoming one of the youngest executives at a rising tech startup in San Francisco. Meetings, deals, late-night strategy sessions. Her life had a rhythm, fast, demanding, but predictable. Until the rhythm stopped. It began with a text message. One she wasn't meant to see. A string of photos. A baby shower. A woman smiling beside Ava's fiancé, the man who had proposed to her just 4 months earlier. At first, she thought it was a cruel prank. But the truth unraveled fast and mercilessly. He'd been living a double life for nearly a year. A wife. A child. Another home. Ava didn't cry. Not then. She packed up her apartment, resigned from her job, and disappeared without explanation. The final blow came 3 weeks later, when the test turned positive. Pregnant. She didn't tell him. Didn't tell anyone. Instead, she rented a small, weathered house in a forgotten coastal town. Just ocean, wind, and silence. She told herself it was temporary. A place to think. But days bled into weeks. She stopped answering calls. Grocery store runs became the only time she left the house. At night, the baby kicked. And Ava stared at the ceiling, wondering if she would be enough. Not strong enough. Not healed enough. Not ready. What haunted her wasn't just the betrayal. It was the idea of bringing a child into a world she no longer trusted. Jaden Carter never knew the comfort of being wanted. He was 5 when his mother disappeared into the system. One overdose too many. By 7, he was a name on a clipboard. Foster care turned him into an expert at packing quickly, lying convincingly, and pretending not to care. Some homes were quiet. Others weren't. By 15, he stopped asking questions and started counting exits. At 17, Jay walked out of his last placement and never looked back. No one followed him. No one called. For the last year, he'd been sleeping behind an abandoned church, tucked beneath rusted scaffolding and loose tarps. It wasn't safe, but it was his. Jay didn't beg. He didn't steal. He showed up early at the library, read old books, and sketched people who didn't see him. Faces. Moments. Sometimes buildings. He drew the world that passed him by. His most prized possession was a tattered leather sketchbook. It had no name on the cover, but every page told his. He survived off kindness, just enough to keep going, not enough to expect. One woman at a diner gave him leftovers when the manager wasn't looking. A retired janitor let him shower once a week at the rec center. But mostly, he was invisible. That was safer. He didn't mind. Until he saw her. A woman sitting alone in the park, crying into her scarf with a baby bump under her coat. She didn't speak. Neither did he. But something in her eyes felt familiar, like she'd been dropped, too. Left to figure it out alone. So, he sketched her. Not as she looked, but how he imagined she once was. Confident, vibrant, alive. He left it on the bench the next morning, and signed. He didn't expect anything in return. He never did. 2 lives. One broken by betrayal, the other by abandonment. Ava had all the tools to succeed, but no one left to believe in her. Jay had no tools at all, just the belief that no one would ever stay. They didn't know each other. Not yet. But their paths were already bending toward collision. Not through fate. Not by miracle. But by one small, human choice. And soon, neither of them would ever be the same. The park was nearly empty that afternoon. Ava sat on a bench beneath a brittle, leafless tree, hands resting on her rounded stomach, staring out toward nothing. The playground nearby creaked as the wind nudged an empty swing. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once, then silence again. She didn't know why she came here. Maybe it was the quiet. Maybe she needed somewhere to exist without being asked how she was feeling, or whether she'd picked a name yet. She hadn't. The sky was overcast, like it was holding back a storm. She could feel it in her joints, in her pulse. Everything in her life felt paused, like the breath before a collapse. Across the park, someone sat under the half-rotted canopy near the public bathrooms. Hunched over. Hood up. A sketchbook in his lap. His pencil moved with a calm, practiced rhythm, but his eyes flicked up every few seconds, watching, not staring. Ava didn't notice him at first. Not until her phone slipped from her coat pocket and hit the ground. She sighed and leaned forward awkwardly to pick it up, but her balance was off, 8 months in, and her body no longer listened the way it used to. Before she could reach for it, the boy was there. No sound. No introduction. Just quiet footsteps and outstretched fingers. He crouched beside her bench and handed her the phone. His hand was thin, scraped. His hoodie sleeves were too short, exposing dark wrists flecked with charcoal dust. Their eyes met only for a second. But something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. Or the silent weight of being 2 people the world had forgotten how to care about. Ava murmured, "Thank you," instinctively, but he was already walking away. Back to his place, under the canopy. Back to the sketchbook. She watched him this time. Watched how he sat still, hunched like he was trying to disappear. How his pencil danced even though his face didn't move. For a moment, she forgot how tired she was. She just watched him draw. And he watched her not look away. They didn't speak again. Not that day. But the thread had been tied. Not a bond. Not yet. But something quieter. The kind of connection that forms when 2 people both carry pain that has no words, only weight. She left the park after sunset. He stayed behind, folding the corner of a page and tucking it away like something important had just happened. They didn't know each other's names. But they had noticed each other. And sometimes, that's where healing begins. It began with a drizzle. The kind that taps gently on rooftops, unnoticed until it turns violent. Ava was behind the wheel, inching toward the grocery store before the worst of the weather hit. The sky had shifted to a heavy gray, and the wind slapped at the windshield like it was trying to get her attention. She hated driving in the rain, but there hadn't been food in the house for 2 days. Then she saw him. Soaked. Hunched. Hoodie clinging to his back like a second skin. Sitting on the curb near the church, arms wrapped around his knees, his sketchbook tucked inside his jacket like something fragile. Jay. She recognized him instantly. The boy from the park. The one who handed her phone back without a word. The one with the kind eyes and storm in his posture. Her foot hovered over the brake. Logic told her to keep going. But she didn't. She pulled over. The engine idled as she sat frozen behind the wheel, watching him through the rain-streaked glass. He hadn't seen her. Or maybe he had and chose not to react. She cracked the window halfway. "Do you need a ride?" Jay didn't move. She hesitated. "There's food in the car. You can warm up." I'm not going far." His eyes narrowed slightly. Not with hostility. With experience. He'd been offered things before. Sometimes kindness came with a price. Still, hunger and exhaustion outweighed suspicion. After a long pause, he stood and walked toward the passenger side. She unlocked the door but didn't say a word. He climbed in slowly, dripping onto the seat, not meeting her eyes. She handed him a towel from the back seat. "For the water," she said. Her voice was thin, cautious. He nodded once, pressed the towel to his face, and mumbled, "Thanks." They drove in silence. The windshield wipers sliced through the storm like a metronome. Ava's knuckles whitened on the wheel. The weight of a stranger in her passenger seat, young, unpredictable, unfamiliar, made her uneasy. But not unsafe. Not quite. "You're the one from the park," she said finally. Jay didn't look at her. "You dropped your phone." "You're always drawing," she added. He shrugged. "It keeps me sane." She glanced sideways at him, surprised by the honesty. "You live nearby?" "Kind of." Another shrug. "Shelter's full. Church lets me stay out back, long as I don't cause problems." Ava nodded slowly. The silence between them was no longer tense, just fragile. Like two people walking across cracked ice, not sure which words would break it. "I used to live in the city," she offered, not knowing why. "Big job. Big apartment. Thought I had everything figured out." Jay turned toward her for the first time. "What happened?" "My fiancé happened," she replied. "Turns out he had a whole other family I didn't know about. I left. Ended up here. Pregnant. Alone." Jay blinked, caught off guard. "That's heavy." She laughed softly, without joy. "That's life." The wipers kept moving. The storm raged on. But something in the car had shifted. Two people, no longer strangers. Just broken souls telling the truth for the first time in weeks. She pulled into a gas station parking lot. Reached behind the seat and handed him a sandwich from a brown paper bag. "It's not much, but..." Jay took it. "It's more than most." They sat like that for a moment, eating quietly as the rain softened outside. No more questions. No expectations. Just shared breath. Before he stepped out, he looked at her one last time. "Thanks for not treating me like trash." She nodded. "Thanks for getting in." Have you ever met a stranger who changed your life in one conversation? Subscribe for more unforgettable encounters. Ava wasn't expecting anything. The storm had passed 2 days ago, and she hadn't seen the boy since he stepped out of her car with nothing more than a quiet, "Thank you," and his soaked hoodie pulled tight around him. She thought about him more than she wanted to admit. There was something about how he listened. How he didn't flinch when she spoke the truth. Most people filled silence with comfort. He just let it be what it was. That morning, she opened the front door and almost missed it. There, propped against the bottom step, was a sheet of thick paper. Curled slightly at the edges, weighed down by a small rock. She picked it up slowly. Her breath caught. It was her. Sitting on that weathered park bench, one hand resting gently on her belly. But it wasn't just a drawing. It was her, as she hadn't seen herself in months. Strong. Centered. Human. There were no exaggerated lines, no flattery. Just raw truth in pencil strokes. Her face, tired but grounded. Her posture, slumped but holding. Her eyes, not lost, just searching. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears rising unexpectedly. It was unsigned, of course. but she knew exactly who had drawn it. Jay. He'd been watching more than she realized. Not in a threatening way, but in the way artists see what others miss. The way he captured the curve of her shoulders, the tilt of her chin. He'd seen her pain, and her effort to carry it with dignity. Ava brought the drawing inside and placed it on the mantel. Then she stood in the middle of the room for a long time, not sure what to do with the lump in her throat. That afternoon, she packed a small bag. 2 sandwiches. A thermos of hot tea. A clean hoodie, still with the tags. A pack of pencils. A sketch pad. She didn't write a note. Didn't sign her name. Just left it all near the back of the church, tucked behind the bench where she'd first seen him sketching. It wasn't charity. It was thanks. The next morning, the bag was gone. No acknowledgement. No sign of him. But she didn't expect one. So she did it again the next day. And again the day after. Sometimes the contents were returned, his old hoodie washed and folded. A doodle left on a napkin. Once, a small thank you scribbled in the corner of a grocery list. None of it was spoken aloud. And that was the beauty of it. They were building something wordless. A rhythm. A language formed through gestures, hers wrapped in brown paper, his in graphite and line work. She found herself looking forward to packing the bag, thinking about what he might need, what he might like. And in doing so, for the first time in weeks, she stopped thinking so much about herself. He, in turn, left more sketches. Some of the park. One of a stray cat sleeping under a bench. Once, a drawing of her front porch with a note beneath it. Safe. That's what it feels like. She hung that one on the fridge. Still, they didn't speak again. Not yet. But Ava began to leave her porch light on a little longer. Jay began to linger just a little closer to the edge of her sidewalk. Neither pushed the silence. They didn't need to. Trust, after all, doesn't always arrive in grand gestures. Sometimes, it begins in the quiet spaces where 2 people choose to keep showing up. The day started like most others, quiet, uneventful. The kind of day Ava had learned to exist in without feeling much of anything. The sky was a cloudless blue, and the air smelled faintly of salt drifting in from the ocean. She hadn't slept well the night before. The baby had been restless, and her back ached more than usual. Still, she forced herself through the motions. Boiled water for tea, scribbled a few notes in her worn journal, packed a small parcel for Jay and left it on the bench behind the church. She hadn't seen him in 2 days, but she kept showing up. It gave her something to hold onto. By mid-afternoon, the sun pressed harder against the windows, and her body felt heavier than usual. She sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water, hoping the dizziness would pass. It didn't. Her heart began to race, then slow, then thump irregularly. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. It slipped through her fingers and clattered to the floor. She tried to stand. The room tilted sideways. Then, darkness. Jay hadn't planned to pass her street that day. He usually avoided the neighborhood during daylight, slipping by only when the shadows grew long. But something pulled him toward the familiar porch, the one where warm meals appeared without question, and where the porch light always stayed on just a little longer than necessary. He paused across the street. Something felt wrong. The blinds in the kitchen window were twisted awkwardly, like they'd been yanked. The screen door hung open, swaying slightly even though the air was still. And then he saw it, through the glass pane of the back door. Ava. On the floor. Not moving. He crossed the street without thinking. He knocked once. No answer. Twice. Louder. Still nothing. His pulse spiked. He tried the door. It was locked. The front and side, too. Every window was shut tight except for the narrow one beside the kitchen, already cracked from the last storm. Without hesitation, Jay grabbed a nearby rock and struck the glass. It gave way with a sharp crack. He climbed through, careful of the jagged edges. Ava. His voice was low, uncertain. No response. He knelt beside her, unsure if he should move her. Her face was pale, lips dry. She was breathing, but barely. Her hand still rested on her belly like a final instinct to protect what mattered most. His own hands shook as he fumbled for her phone on the floor, tapping the emergency button. 911, what's your emergency? There's a woman, she's pregnant. She collapsed. I think she passed out. She needs help. Fast. The dispatcher asked for the address. Jay rattled it off, having memorized it after months of walking by. Stay on the line, she instructed. But he didn't. Because Jay knew how this looked. A teenage boy, black, homeless, inside a stranger's house with a broken window and a woman unconscious on the floor? He didn't need to wait for sirens to know what kind of story the world would write about that. So he grabbed the towel from the counter, wet it, and placed it gently on Ava's forehead. Then he crouched by the wall, watching her chest rise and fall, praying it wouldn't stop. You're gonna be okay, he whispered. You helped me. I'm just returning the favor. He waited until he heard the sirens. Then he slipped out the side door before the flashing lights reached the driveway. He didn't take anything. Didn't leave a note. Just disappeared into the alley and vanished with the wind. Ava woke hours later in a hospital bed, the scent of antiseptic sharp in her nose. A nurse stood nearby, checking monitors. You gave us a scare, the nurse said gently. Mild dehydration and stress. The baby's fine, but you need to rest. Ava blinked slowly. Who brought me in? The nurse hesitated. 911 call came from your phone. But no one was here when the paramedics arrived. Ava's brows furrowed. She vaguely remembered the floor, the slipping glass, the cold sweat. But someone had spoken to her, hadn't they? She turned her head toward the window. For a moment, she thought she saw the silhouette of a boy in a hoodie standing just beyond the parking lot. Then he was gone. She whispered to herself, barely audible. It was him. She didn't know his name. Didn't know how he'd gotten inside. But she knew, deep in her gut, that the boy with the sketchbook, the one who watched without speaking, had been the one to save her. And somehow, she had to find him. Ava was discharged from the hospital 2 days later, with strict instructions to rest, hydrate, and avoid stress. But rest was impossible, because her thoughts kept returning to him. The boy who had vanished into the shadows after saving her life. No name, no note, no explanation. Only a feeling that he'd been there when no one else was, and it wasn't the first time. She replayed the broken window, the cool cloth on her forehead, the voice, low and sure, whispering she would be okay. She knew who it was. And she wasn't going to wait around for another miracle. She had to find him. It started at the church. The pastor hadn't seen Jay in nearly a week, but he pointed her to an alley near the pier, where the boys sometimes slept under stacked crates when it rained. She searched there. Nothing. Then the old diner, where Jay had sometimes gotten scraps. The cook remembered him, keeps his head down, real quiet, always draws, but hadn't seen him since the storm. The third day, she found him. He was curled beside a rusted fire escape behind an abandoned thrift store, knees drawn to his chest, sketchbook clutched tightly under his arm like a lifeline. His hoodie was torn at the sleeve, dried blood crusted near his temple, and his lip was split. He didn't hear her at first. She stood in silence, watching him breathe, slow, uneven. A thin line of ants marched near his foot, and a crumpled sandwich wrapper fluttered in the breeze. Jay, she said softly. His eyes opened, blinking against the daylight. When he saw her, he flinched, tried to sit up too fast and winced. I'm not here to hurt you, she said. You saved my life. Jay looked down, ashamed. Didn't want you to get in trouble. Figured it was safer if I left. You broke into my house, she replied with a small smile. And it's the only time I've ever been grateful for that. He chuckled once, dry and hollow. Didn't think you'd come looking. I didn't think I'd stop. She crouched beside him, slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. Come home with me. Just for now. You need to rest. He didn't answer immediately. His pride flickered behind his tired eyes. Years of being a burden, of being passed from one temporary place to another, made him hesitate. He was used to sleeping with one eye open, used to rejection wrapped in politeness. "This isn't pity," she said, reading him perfectly. "This is gratitude. And maybe, I just don't want to feel alone either." That last line, raw, unguarded, broke something open between them. He nodded. She let him into the house through the front door this time. No broken windows. No hiding. Jay stood awkwardly in the living room, unsure where to put his hands. She gave him clean towels, laid out a spare blanket, and made soup without asking questions. No lectures. No rules. That night, he fell asleep on the couch beneath the glow of the porch light, his sketchbook resting on his chest like armor. The house was quiet. Still. Safe. Over the next few days, words replaced silence in slow, careful steps. They didn't talk about foster homes or betrayals. Not yet. But they talked about art. About how Jay had started sketching faces at 8, copying magazine covers in homes he didn't remember the names of. About how Ava used to design interfaces for tech startups, how she once gave life to things people used but never saw. He told her he liked her house, that it smelled like pages and sleep. She told him she hated being seen as fragile, that her pregnancy didn't make her weak, just scared of how strong she might need to become. One evening, as she folded baby clothes someone from the church had donated, she paused and looked up. "Why did you draw me?" Jay didn't look away this time. "Because you looked like you were trying to hold the whole world together, and no one noticed." She swallowed hard. "I noticed," he added. And that was it. The moment the wall between them cracked. Not shattered. Just gave way. Enough for something real to begin forming in the space they'd both protected for too long. The rhythm of the house began to change. Jay didn't announce himself or ask for permission. He simply started doing things. At first, it was quiet tasks. Taking out the trash. Sweeping the porch. Fixing the cupboard hinge that always squeaked. He moved like someone used to being unnoticed, always trying to make himself useful before anyone could decide he wasn't worth keeping around. Ava didn't stop him. She let him work. And in between the chores, she caught glimpses of the boy behind the silence. He was observant. Gentle. Hummed old songs under his breath that sounded like they came from someone else's childhood. And when she cooked, he lingered nearby, not hovering, just present. Steady. Like the house itself breathed easier when he was in it. The nursery had remained untouched for weeks, a half-painted room Ava couldn't bring herself to finish. One afternoon, Jay stood in the doorway, studying the bare walls and unopened boxes. "Mind if I help with this?" Ava hesitated. "You don't have to. I want to." She nodded once. And that was enough. Together, they unpacked soft blankets, picture books, tiny clothes folded with unused love. Jay handled everything with quiet reverence, like each item held a story he didn't want to disturb. He picked up a small stuffed rabbit, its ear already flopping. "I had one of these," he said. "Left it behind after my third home. Couldn't go back for it." Ava didn't respond with pity. Just handed him the paint roller. They painted in comfortable silence, lavender and cream. The sun dipped lower as the hours passed, golden light spilling across the floorboards like a slow promise. At one point, Ava sat on the edge of a chair, one hand on her back, exhaling deeply. Jay looked over. "You okay?" "Just sore." "The usual." He nodded, set the roller aside, and picked up a picture book from the box nearby. "I could read to her, if you'd like." She smiled. "She's listening." He opened the book and began to read. Softly, carefully, like he was afraid the words might break if spoken too loudly. Ava watched his face instead of the page. For a moment, the years between them vanished. What remained were two people building something gentle out of what had been fractured. That evening, over tea and toast, Ava found herself telling stories she hadn't spoken aloud in months. About her childhood obsession with astronomy. About her first job in tech and how it stole her weekends but gave her a sense of purpose. About the night she almost drove off a bridge after her fiancé's betrayal, and the way the wind hitting her windshield somehow made her hit the brakes. Jay listened like every word mattered. Then he offered pieces of his own story. Not in a rush. Just fragments. The first time I was placed somewhere, I thought it was forever. I was 7. The woman made homemade jam and let me feed her cat. What happened? She moved. I didn't. Later, he told her about the old librarian who let him sit in the warm back corner after school, as long as he pretended to read quietly. How he used to trace comic book panels with a dull pencil until the paper nearly tore. How he memorized poems without realizing he was doing it. Words, he said, were the only things that didn't leave. They didn't talk about the future, or what Jay's presence in her home might mean when the baby came. They didn't label what they were building. But it was clear. They were becoming something to each other. Not lovers. Not saviors. Just two people who had found shelter in each other's presence. A kind of refuge that didn't need permission or promises. Jay began to call her A when he was joking. She called him Jay when she wanted to check if he was okay without pushing too hard. The house, once silent and still, now echoed with quiet laughter. Radio static. The rustle of pages turning. And every night, Jay read a story to her belly. Every night, Ava fell asleep knowing, maybe for the first time in months, that she wasn't completely alone. The storm rolled in without warning. One moment, the town sat under a blanket of humid calm. The next, the sky fractured with thunder and wind. Rain hammered the roof like it was trying to get in. Jay stood at the window, watching power lines sway dangerously in the wind, when he heard it. A sharp gasp. Then, another. He turned to see Ava clutching the doorway, her face twisted in pain, one hand bracing against the wall. "It's happening," she whispered. "I think she's coming." Jay rushed to her side. Okay, sit down, slowly." But her knees buckled before she could. He caught her, guiding her to the floor with trembling hands. Her breaths were coming fast now, uneven, panicked. He grabbed her phone. No signal. He checked the power. Dead. No lights. No heat. No connection to the outside world. The roads were already flooding. "Just breathe," he said, kneeling beside her. "In through your nose, out slow. We've got this." She gripped his hand tightly, too tightly, but he didn't flinch. Just wiped her forehead with a cloth and kept counting through each contraction. "I'm not ready," she gasped. "You are," he said firmly. "You've been ready." She shook her head, tears slipping free. "I'm scared, Jay." "So am I. But we're still here, right? Still breathing." Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the small room like a camera flash. Jay could see the fear in her eyes, but also something deeper, determination. He nodded once. "You're not alone. I'm right here." The minutes stretched. The pain sharpened. Her cries grew louder, echoing through the dark. Jay didn't leave her side. He talked her through every wave, every breath. He told her she was strong, that she was doing it, that she could keep going, even when she thought she couldn't. And when the door finally burst open and the paramedics arrived, muddy, soaked, flashlights in hand, Jay stepped back just enough to let them in, but didn't let go of her hand until they told him it was time to move. Ava gave birth an hour later, safe and stable at the hospital. It was a girl. Small, healthy, loud. When they placed her in Ava's arms, she didn't speak for a long time. Just stared down at the tiny, squirming body that had made it through every hardship with her. A nurse asked gently, "Have you chosen a name?" Ava nodded through tears. "Hope." The nurse smiled. "That's beautiful." But Ava wasn't looking at the baby when she said it. She was looking at the boy in the corner, mud on his shoes, circles under his eyes, fingers still stained with paint from the nursery he'd finished 2 days before. "Her name is Hope," she said again, louder this time. "Because sometimes that's all we have. And sometimes, it shows up when we least expect it." Jay didn't speak. Just smiled once, small and quiet, like he knew he wasn't the hero in her story. But maybe, just maybe, he had helped her write a new chapter. The house felt different now. Sunlight spilled across the kitchen table, catching the wind chimes by the window. Laughter echoed through the hallway, not loud, but full. Real. Hope was 6 months old, a bundle of energy with curious eyes and a giggle that filled every corner of the home. She loved music. She loved bouncing. And more than anything, she loved the tall boy with paint on his hands who made funny faces and called her Professor Wiggles. Jay. He wasn't sleeping on benches anymore. He had a room of his own now, soft blankets, shelves of sketchbooks, a quiet space where he could breathe without fear of being moved or forgotten. But he spent most days somewhere else. At the community youth shelter on 8th Street. Ava had started it with help from the local council and a quiet donation from an anonymous supporter who once left fresh meals behind a church bench. Jay taught art there now. Twice a week. Nothing formal. Just pencils, paper, and kids who needed someone to remind them that their stories mattered, even if no one had told them that before. He never raised his voice. Never talked down to them. Just sat and listened. Let them draw what they couldn't say out loud. Some of the kids had seen more by 12 than most adults would admit to at 30. Jay saw them. And they saw him. Ava watched from a folding chair one afternoon, Hope bundled in her lap. Jay crouched beside a boy tracing angry circles on paper. "You don't have to make it pretty," he told him. "You just have to make it yours." Ava smiled. She'd found her footing again. Not in the life she'd planned, but in the one she'd built with bare hands and broken pieces. The betrayal that once defined her felt like a shadow from another life. Now, her days were filled with purpose. Small moments. Warmth. No romantic partner. No fairy tale ending. But a family, real and chosen. She glanced at Jay as he scooped Hope into his arms after class. The baby squealed with delight, tugging at his hoodie string like it was her favorite toy. They weren't related. Not by blood. They weren't lovers. Never had been. But they were something harder to explain and stronger to name. They were home to each other. That night, Jay pinned another sketch to the fridge. It was simple, 3 hands overlapping. One small, one strong, one weathered by time. Beneath it, in careful block letters, he'd written, "Built. Not born." Ava read it twice, tears threatening, but she didn't cry. Instead, she whispered to Hope, "See this? This is what love looks like when no one's trying to own it." Do you believe 2 strangers can become the most important people in each other's lives? Like, share, and subscribe for more stories of unexpected connection. Healing doesn't always come from love. Sometimes, it comes from being seen, truly seen, for who you are when you have nothing to give but your presence. This story is a quiet testament to the kind of healing that emerges not from grand gestures or romantic love, but from the simple act of genuine human recognition. Ava and Jay's journey reminds us that dignity can be reclaimed even in our most broken moments, when someone acknowledges our pain without judgment, without expectation. In a world that often measures worth by success, appearance, or connection, this story challenges us to look deeper. It invites us to see the unseen, the homeless boy with a sketchbook who carries more scars than anyone can count, the woman shattered by betrayal and fear, both navigating loneliness in vastly different worlds. Their bond is not forged in romance or rescue. It's built from shared vulnerability, mutual respect, and kindness offered freely, without strings attached. It's a reminder that human connection transcends labels, backgrounds, and circumstances. Sometimes, the most profound impact comes not from changing someone's life overnight, but from quietly showing up, being present, and witnessing their existence without turning away. This narrative encourages viewers to embrace compassion in everyday moments, to recognize that anyone, no matter their situation, can become a beacon of hope for another. As you watch Ava and Jay's story unfold, ask yourself, what does it mean to truly see someone? How might your presence, no matter how small, be the light that guides someone out of their darkest hour? This story is a call to action, not to fix, but to simply be. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect. Have you ever been truly seen by a stranger when you needed it most? Share your story in the comments. Your voice matters. If you believe in the power of quiet kindness and unexpected connections, please like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that restores hope. Together, let's build a community that honors healing beyond romance, through empathy, presence, and humanity. Thank you for watching Love, Enchanted. Your support means everything.